Now heading into Druid. Starting off with the Bog Beam, 3 mana, deals 3 damage to a minion, costs 0 if you have at least 7 mana crystals. You have cards like Nourish and Breath of Dreams to speed up your mana crystal gain there, and you should be able to get this out for 0 mana, and even if you don't, I mean, 3 mana for 3 damage isn't the worst thing I've ever seen. It's pretty bad, but I think overall this card is pretty solid. You should be able to get it off for 0. Will it be played? I'm not sure. I actually don't fucking know. Is this even good enough to play? Wrath is just better, right? I'm gonna give this card a 3 out of 5. I think it's alright. Nothing crazy. I'm sure it'll see a bit of play, just at least with people testing it out, but can't be too sure about this one. I'm a little iffy. Next we have Overgrowth, which is kind of like Wild Growth, but a little over the top. 4 mana, gain 2 empty mana crystals. So you're essentially paying 1 extra mana for 1 extra empty mana crystal, which seems very worth it. So I think this card is very good overall. Will you be able to survive and get all the value that you need out of this card? Probably. I think this card's very good. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. Usually ramping up in Hearthstone is very good. That's why they had to nerf Wild Growth. So maybe this card could get nerfed as well. We'll see. Next we got Glowfly Swarm. 5 mana spell. Summon a 2/2 Glowfly for each spell in your hand. This card is okay. Not anything too great. I'm not really too thrilled about it. If you're coining into it on turn 4, then you're losing out on the coin as a spell in your hand. You shouldn't really have too many spells in your hand. You might get okay value for 5 mana, but I don't think this is anything that Druid really needs. I don't see a deck that would really play this. Even Token doesn't even want to play this card, I would think. Unless you're playing a lot of buff spells, then maybe. But still, I don't think so. I'm going to give it a 2 out of 5, maybe even a 1.5. I'm going to give it a 1.5 out of 5. It has the potential to do maybe a little something for you, but even so, 2/2s are not really scary at all. Next we got Ironbark. This is kind of an interesting card. This is another card that has to deal with having at least 7 mana crystals. So it's 2 mana, give a minion +1/+3 and taunt. Cost 0 if you have at least 7 mana crystals. I think this card is actually decent. If you're playing a bunch of big things in your deck, if you're ramping up, then giving one of those big minions taunt could be very beneficial to you. Do you need to use a slot in your deck for this card? I'm not exactly sure. I think it's alright. For 0 mana, it is pretty damn good, of course, but I'm going to give this card a 2.5. Just because I think it's actually a decent card, but I don't think it'll be played at all. Will taunt be important enough that you put it in there and you don't have already taunt options? We shall see. Okay, this card is a lot better than the last card though. Germination. 4 mana, summon a copy of a friendly minion, give the copy taunt. This is a pretty crazy card, it seems. Especially with some cards that might tutor out, that might cheat out some cards earlier on. There is a new dormant minion for Druid that we'll be seeing later to reduce the cost of something. So we're foreseeing that big minion Druid is going to be a thing. And making a copy of a friendly minion that's already big and giving it taunt can be very, very beneficial to you. Could be the difference between winning and losing, just being able to stop your opponent while pushing with that unit that does not have taunt. I think this card is very good. The only downside is that you can't target something like Wing Guardian that can't be targeted. But besides that, this card should be very good in a big Druid. I'm assuming something like Embiggen Druid is going to get very impacted, heavily impacted by this card. I could see it being a force to be reckoned with. 4.5 out of 5. New legendary card for Druid, Yasiel Windsinger. 9 mana, 5/5. Your spells cost 1 mana. This is very similar. This card is very similar to Aviana, which was a 9 mana 5/5 that made your minions cost 1 and it was only run because there was a combo card, the card Coon, that worked with it to refresh your mana. But besides that, it was too slow, and this especially being spells instead of minions, it should be very, very slow. But if you're cheating out mana, if you're ramping up, maybe there's a world where this does a little something for you. I mean, with Innervate, this is actually going to make your Innervate cost 1, so that's not even good in that case. I don't think this card is going to be playable. I think it's just a meme. In Wild, I can see it doing some crazy things, but in Standard, I'm going to give it a 1.5 out of 5. Okay, next card we got here is Marsh Hydra, 7 mana 7/7 with Rush. After this attacks, add a random 8 cost minion to your hand. So, I mean, it's pretty decent. It does generate value. It does have Rush, which is good. 7 mana 7/7 with Rush is above average for stats because of the Rush. Not too excited about it, but it could just be good in general if you're ramping up pretty fast. It does give you just a nice curve if you don't have an 8-drop in your hand. So overall, not too bad, but not too great. You may run it. I can see it being run one of. Okay, moving on to the next card, Fungal Fortunes. 2 mana, draw 3 cards. Discard any minions drawn. It's essentially Book of Specters, but the inverse. Will it be good? I mean, the effect is good, sure, if you're running enough spells. But the decks that you would be doing that with would probably be like a token Druid. You could be using that new card that we just went over before, the Glowfly Swarm, and maybe some more buff cards as well. I don't think Druid has enough to make this card work. I'm going to give it a 1 out of 5. Now we go into the prime of Druid. Arch Spore Mishafin. 3 mana, 3/4, Taunt, Death Rattle, shuffle Mishafin Prime into your deck. And we see Mishafin Prime on the right-hand side right there. Taunt, 10 mana Taunt, 9/9, choose one, summon 8, 9/9 Fungal Giant with Taunt or with Rush. So, I mean, this Prime card has got to be one of the best Prime cards that we've seen. Again, it's one of the best Primes. Might be the best Prime. You get essentially 18/18 in stats, and you get one of them, half of it with Taunt guaranteed, and then you get to choose the other half. This card's really, really good if you can get it off. I give this a 5 out of 5, just like a lot of the other Prime cards. It's a prime example of a good card. Yeah. The last card that we see for Druid is Imprisoned Satyr. 3 mana, 3/3. Dormant for 2 turns. When this awakens, reduce the cost of a random minion in your hand by 5. That's a lot. That's a big discount. We actually saw this card in the reveal. Not in the reveal stream, but when they revealed this card, they did an example. So in the example that they showed with this card, they coined it out on turn 2, and then it awakened on turn 4, reducing Alexstrasza in their hand by 5, making them able to play it on turn 4, which is a bit crazy. I think this card is actually pretty nutty. I know it is a little slow with the Dormant, but I think this card's really, really good, especially in this big Druid that they're trying to push. I would give this card a 4.5 out of 5. I'm really tempted to give it a 5, but I mean, I could totally just be wrong. It might be too bad, it might be too slow. But I'm assuming if you're playing this card in your deck, you're probably running a lot of big stuff only big minions. So I think this card could actually just catapult you to the end game real quick and just create circumstances that would never be possible before. I don't know.